The Light Rail Manila Corporation, operator and concessionaire of the Light Rail Transit Line 1 or LRT1 and the LRT Cavite Extension, like everyone else, was hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. How it met the challenges and updates on the progress of the extension are the subject of this week's Motoring Forum.
The Light Rail Manila Corporation, or LRMC, won the bid to rehabilitate, operate, and maintain the Light Rail Transit Line 1, or LRT1, and more importantly, the LRT1 Cavite Extension Project in 2015. LRMC took over the LRT1 in 2016, but work on extending the line to Bacoor and Cavite only started in 2019, when authorities finally began resolving right-of-way issues along the route. Before that, the LRMC had been working to rehabilitate and modernize the LRT1, phasing in the switch to new train signaling system and ordering new trains from a manufacturer based in Spain. All these came to a halt in March of 2020 when government started imposing community quarantine protocols and restrictions, which included the suspension of all forms of land transport, including the light rail transit systems. How did the lockdown affect the LRT1 and work on the LRT1 extension to Cavite? Motoring Today visit LRMC President and CEO Juan Alfonso via Zoom to ask the question.
It was challenging for us because when we have no operations, then there's no revenue for the company. And our company still makes majority of its revenue from providing service to our passengers and charging for each ticket or each ride.
Like everyone else, LRMC had to wait for restrictions to ease and public transport allowed to resume operations. It soon became evident that as the COVID-19 contagion continued to spread and would not likely disappear soon, the economy needed to be restarted, and along with this, public transport needed to resume. Trains were allowed to resume operations in June when Metro Manila was placed under general community quarantine restrictions, but this was under strict guidelines meant to maintain social distancing on board trains and at the station.
The second challenge would be having limited capacity. We were only loading about 12-13% of our passengers at this time because of really regulation from government.
So how did the LRMC meet this challenge? The LMRC knew it needed to convince authorities, the IATF, the DOTR, and DOH, that train operations can be safe with proper protocols in place. The LMRC decided to look at how train operators in Europe and other countries continue to operate even amidst the pandemic.
First, most of the rail lines did not have any reduction in capacity for loading the trains. So that was an important benchmark. Second is, why is it safe inside the train? I think with this pandemic, we're realizing more and more that ventilation and the free flow of air is critical. The train doors open every 2 minutes, so there's a fresh air exchange. The air conditioning system uses about 20 to 30% of fresh air. Also, we added HEPA filters in the air condition, similar to what we have in the aircraft. So this cleaned the air further.
To further convince the IATF that LRT1 operations can be safe, LRMC undertook measures to sanitize trains and stations and minimize contact with and among riders. These included using UV technology to disinfect trains and sanitize stations at regular and frequent intervals, temperature checks of passengers before entering stations, the use of cashless payment systems. Late in 2020, the LRT1 began to see an increase in ridership, but still way below pre-COVID-19 volumes.
We still have about 30% of our riders from the normal times, so it's still a big drop. It's a 70% drop from where it was. And it's challenging because our business is basically high operating costs of this equipment. So we've tried to maintain the system and still keep it safe despite the challenges and despite the additional costs of operating safely.
It was only natural that the COVID-19 pandemic affected timetables for the arrival of the new trains. So the new trains ordered prior to the pandemic began to arrive.
We're getting 30 train sets. Each train is composed of 4 cars. That's why it's 120 rail cars in total. So each one is now already PWD friendly and then also installed with the latest signaling system, which will allow us for safer travel and safer journey.
After being given the go-ahead by the IATF, the LRMC resumed work on completing the train signal systems for the LRT1, as well as work on the Cavite Extension project.
We just completed an 11 billion peso program to re-signal, to change the signaling system. So it's going to be a brand new signaling system. that will allow for shorter, headways or gaps between trains. And something to look forward to and something that's exciting. Our target for switching over to the new signaling system, which will allow us to use the new trains, is about the third quarter of 2021. No?
Work on the LRT1 extension to Cavite was put on the fast track as the LRMC contractors learned to deal with construction in COVID-19 conditions.
We're at about 50% completed. A lot of it is just the civil works. No, we haven't started anything other than the civil works. After that, the tracks and electric systems will be put in place after the civil structures are finished.
The LRMC expects the whole of 2021 to be a year of recovery. Ridership on trains is seen to increase once government rolls out the anti-COVID-19 vaccination program and quarantine restrictions are further eased.
We see this year as really a year where the recovery starts, and we're hopeful that at least the business environment will normalize by next year. Hopefully sooner than later in 2022. But it is a challenge, and I think we're working closely with our partners in government to communicate what are these pain points and how we can possibly address them. And also in terms of the public messaging, so that they feel that they're being looked after. Even in these challenging situations, their journey and their health remains safe with that.
The present administration has made it a priority to develop the rail sector as a major part of the country's mass transport system. It may be a reflection of this policy that LRMC seems encouraged to modernize, improve services and facilities, and now, under the COVID-19 pandemic, be safe against the spread of contagion. That's our Motoring Forum this week, courtesy of Suzuki Philippines.